Can you hear me?
Oh yeah, we hear you. How about can you hear us, Matt?
Yeah, but it's going through my speakers. Let me go into settings here and have it go through my headset.
You're so high tech. Love it.
Okay, now I can hear you loud and clear. Thing is, I've got a 2013 desktop computer here running like Windows 7 or something, and I have Microsoft Outlook like 2011, and this computer is better than the one that I got from Hampton.
You need some 30 weight ball bearings, some gauze pads, and some 3-in-1 oil. It's all
ball bearings. Yeah, it's all ball bearings these days.
Well, but I don't want to update my desktop because there's like all the stuff saved. Everything's where I want it, and I know my buddy goes, "Oh no, you can just like transfer all it." Just I'm like, "Oh no, man, that's you're talking next level here."
I go to Greg's office. I go to Greg's office. And he has like 3,000 applications open on his laptop. It's like, dude, you can minimize some of this stuff and close it out.
Well, I mean, you see, you see what the office looks like. It's a very intense filing system. Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. My daughter,
I like when my buddy came to the other office, and I've got I think I have 4 or 5 screens, right? And they're all like at different levels, and they're on like piles of books. And he's like, what is it with the ghetto monitor stands?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I said I'm not comfortable with how you're saying that.
So listen, everybody, welcome to This Week in Lumber with Matt Beamer from Hampton Lumber, the Hampton Lumber Sales.
Yeah.
And Greg Riley from Sitka USA. We talk weekly about this is going into year 2 now, I think, guys. Oh, a little green juice there, Greg. So hey, the first thing I wanted to talk about is the NALA event, Greg. You said you had a few people walk up, say, "Hey, I see you on the show." Some of them you didn't even know who they were. Some of them you did. You're a celebrity now, right?
Well, no, I mean, I would never make a representation that I didn't recognize somebody. I recognize them all. They're fans of the show. Yeah, no, you know what? It was really, really nice. Got some super positive feedback from a lot of people that watch the show, and I mean, I think we can figure that we're doing a public service here, and so it was great. It was great to have the feedback. It was great to see the people. Great show down there. They had 1,600 people, which was probably the most in the modern era. There's been 26 traders markets, and I'm 26 for 26.
That's excellent. It's interesting. Even when I was a kid in the industry, you're always like, Ash, you can go to these events and I'll pay for you to go, but make sure you go there with some questions and come back with some simple answers so we can tell what's going on or what the sentiment is there. And I know Matt's the same way when he goes to places, asks questions, what did you bring back from that? The one thing that you thought of?
So, no, you're absolutely right, Ash. And I probably did less preparation for this. It kind of snuck up on me. But, I mean, the thing I came back with was people were way more positive than I expected. And, so that was a little concerning to me. But in general, I want to acknowledge that things are going to be more challenging as we move forward. But nobody was really negative. So, and I think that's partially a testament to the fact is that there really hasn't been any hard times yet. There's been a lot of talk about it, but things have still been really relatively good.
Certainly, I know you don't drink, but the way I usually get a good indicator is when you walk up to a bar at NALA and it's 7 deep, and there's anybody there is willing to pay the bill. You've had a good year.
I did hear stories of a couple of guys that picked up some bar tabs, and
That's awesome. I mean,
Good for
appreciate that. That's good feedback. So what we're going to do is kind of I got a little checklist of what I want to talk about. And honestly, the
Matt
market
likes
has
that.
been,
By the way, Matt likes when you take control of things,
Right.
And and drive the agenda.
Well, that's all right. That's kind of my job. So look at it's confusing out there right now. We just went through 2 of the best years, probably we can argue best in our careers and probably in anybody's careers, whether you're a mill, wholesale distributor, retailer. If you didn't make money in the last 2 years, either because you're great at what you do, and even in some cases by accident, you will never make money in this industry. Now we're in a different part of the, as Matt puts it, the ball game, right? And this is where Matt and Greg really excel, because this is where it gets hard, but there's still great volume out there right now. You just have to make sure you do the right thing. So there's this camp out there, even of last week, that we're underbought and we're going to have a big move. And then there's this camp, like, you got to be careful, right? So kind of what I wanted to talk about going into, let's start out real quick is, Greg, you always said to me the last few weeks is, I always wake up sometimes and have too much inventory in these markets, but you've been pretty good about controlling that, it seems like. And Matt, you're doing the same thing. What's your guys' few thoughts of where we at in the market, and what's the sentiment you're hearing out there?
I'm battling every day to keep my inventory from growing, and I've succeeded at it, but it's just a lot of work. It's a lot of phone calls, a lot of emails, a lot of patience, and you just have to address every day as an opportunity to continue, managing inventory. And I'm going to continue to do this because we're in a recessionary environment right now. Whether we want to call it officially a recession or not is irrelevant. To my way of looking at the world and the business that we're in right now, we're already in a recession, have been since June.
Did you just make that word up? I've never heard of it before.
Which one?
Recession.
Nobody wants to talk about it, but you read the paper and Amazon's laying off 10,000 people, and Facebook's laying off 11,000 people, and Target's getting beat up today on the stock market because their forecast is negative. What's keeping people from calling it a recession is the low unemployment rate. And anyways, we could talk about it. That's a whole nother hour of conversation. But the bottom line is, what I see in front of me is headwinds. I don't see tailwinds. I see headwinds. And so when I see headwinds, I want to be conservative. I want to conserve my cash, and I want to spend that money wisely. When an opportunity comes along, a good basis trade or some deal that pops up in the next 3 or 4 months, I want to be able to invest in that. And the only way I'm going to be able to invest in that is if I have my inventory in right shape, right? If I've got 8 million feet of inventory unsold on the ground and my budget is 4 million feet, I'm in trouble. I can't go out and take advantage of these good deals if they pop up, if and when they pop up. So my entire agenda right now is just keep inventory at a manageable level and keep your ears open for those. There's going to be some really good deals and there already is some good deals that have popped up in the market over the last few months, but there's going to be more of that.
Yeah, Greg, over to you. You had a good comment to me. I was walking to the train today. You're like, hey, this is the kind of market where somebody calls you from a mill or somewhere else, and you're always the one that says you want to give mills business every day when you can, right? No matter what the market is, if you can, or at least feedback. And you're like, this is the one where, like, can you pay me more? And you're like, do you want the order? And they're like, okay, and it's that's where we're at right now. But you also made the comment that, okay, we're getting late in that game where there's good deals right now. Does that make sense too?
Well, I guess one of the things that I've noticed today was that in Eastern Canada, anyway, there seems to be a higher sense of urgency to deal with the lumber that's in front of them. I see a lot of lumber available for prompt shipment, and so that mills are having to be very aggressive in the numbers that they accept to move that prompt lumber. So that's along your comment about inventory, Ash. I mean, I felt like I had been doing a really good job and being really disciplined for the last 5-6 months, but I feel lately that I've gotten a little sloppy, gotten a little loose, and I need a little bit of an intervention right now, because you get down to these numbers and you start seeing like 3 handles and like low 400s delivered, and I go, boy, that's really cheap fiber. And the one thing we know about cheap fiber, Matt, right?
Go ahead.
Gets cheaper.
Yeah.
Cheap fiber keeps getting cheaper.
So I wanted to bring the poll, your LinkedIn poll, up today. A couple reasons. Mike was telling me he was on a call yesterday with who did I say that was yesterday, Greg?
Taylor.
Russ Taylor, and he mentioned and I wasn't there, but the way I heard it back from Mike is Russ mentioned the poll that you put out there, and he made the comment that nobody's ever right on it. And I think that's kind of sometimes the intent of it, right? In a way, because you want to get market sentiment. So what do you
I told Kyle that he's right on every one of the polls.
Gotcha. Okay. All right. Well, right on. He probably is, right?
He's the only guy I know that's right on every poll.
So you already gave me your feeling on what this told you. Do you want to share what you think about this? And if anybody doesn't know, Greg puts this out once every few weeks when we're near an inflection point in a market where there's uncertainty in both ways to get the sentiment. And one thing about lumber people, they will give you their opinion.
I mean, I'm going to say maybe not. I maybe put a poll out every 2 to 3 months. But to your point, Ash, is try and see if we're at an inflection point. And what Russ commented on is the reality is that if I look back at the polls, they end up being a great determinant for what's going to happen, because if you look and you find where 80% of the responses are, the 80% are wrong, right? It always ends up being the 20% that are right. And then there's some caveats to that, and there's some nuances to it. But, so I look at this poll and I go, well, I guess we're going into the mid 300s because, everybody thinks it's going to bottom, low 400s to high 300s. So it's probably going lower than that. I mean, the other thing, as I could say, was that it already bottomed and it was going up, but I know that's not true. So,
but you also had a good point. You said to be like, that probably is the point where there's capacity rationalization gets discussed.
So, yeah, I mean, the backdrop that I have right here in my conundrum is we're in a period of seasonal strength. I mean, from now until, this is a point where historically you want to build inventory, you want to start the inventory building process because mills are producing full on right now and demand is slower. So prices are typically at a low point, and they typically make a high point sometime from mid-February till the 1st of April. So, but back to Matt's point is it's really hard to wrap your head around that when you know the headwinds that we have.
Yep.
We're also in a period of overreaction too. So we overreacted for 2 years to the upside. Now we're gonna see what the overreaction is to a remarkably slower single family housing environment that we're in, and that takes a lot of the lumber that we produce, right? I mean, if you look at what Hampton produces, we don't just make 9-foot studs, right? We don't just make 2-4 plate stock Doug fir number 2. We make all kinds of other stuff too, and that stuff's got to go into mostly single family housing, and single family housing isn't really pulling its weight right now, and it probably won't for a while because there's a lot of uncertainty in that. And the reports that I'm getting from people that I know in real estate, at the builder level, at the mortgage level, that I talk to on a regular basis, they're all telling me the same story. it's not going to get better in the first quarter. It's going to get worse. So that might be something people should be paying close attention to in their own markets.
So, and Greg, you brought me up to, home builder sentiment drops to a decade low today as builders add more incentives. I think that's something that we
2000 we're at home builder sentiments back to 2012 levels. Yep.
Okay, gotcha.
And we have housing starts come out tomorrow. Permits are the consensus is 1.5 million permits, which seems like a really, 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 really big number to me. And 1.4 million housing starts, which seems to be, I feel both of those estimates are on the high side. Do
you think the surprise will come in below 8%?
I just think that based on what we know, those seem like high numbers. But there's so much standard deviation in that on a month-to-month basis, the numbers can change quite a bit.
So I try to.
The thing to watch tomorrow is to watch completions, see where the completion number is, and I'll wager the over/under is that completions are actually higher than starts, and we begin the process over the next 4 to 6 months of reversing the last year where starts and permits were way above completions.
Sounds good. I was going to bring up Home Depot and Lowe's earnings. They seem to be decent. Inventories, I think, were up, and maybe I don't know. Did any of you guys were able to dig into the Home Depot or Lowe's earnings just to see how they're doing? I mean, their still projections are decent going into next year. I didn't really see anything interesting there at all, but I haven't read too deep into it yet.
I mean, they're experiencing some of the same benefit that we experienced last 2 years, but just more of a delayed reaction because the way the way they report their earnings, and they have cheaper inventory costs. They've sold into an inflationary market, right? So they have some like if you look at the earnings from oil companies, they've all had pretty good quarters too, right? Well, I mean, because your physical inventory was priced at 6 months ago's cost, and now you're selling into the inflationary environment that we're in because they have to cover their future costs. I wonder if Home Depot and Lowe's, this is the slow time of year for them now, right? We've gone through the shoulder season, which starts in September and ends about now. Now the weather hits, and so what's going to happen for the next 3 months is not that much. Mostly interior type stuff. There's not as much lumber usage going through Home Depot and Lowe's in January. But then they'll start their inventory build for the springtime sometime in February. And I'm curious in February if they're going to go back to the same types of numbers that we've seen from them here the last 3 years, which are records. I mean, they have consumed a lot of lumber as a unit in the last 3 years, a lot, more than they used to. And so I'm kind of curious if that trend will continue in 2023, because I think we're still going to be battling inflation, and we're going to be battling some negative consumer sentiment. And I don't think that the federal government is just going to keep printing money, right? They can't.
Can't they just go to?
You can't solve inflation. You can't solve inflation if you do that.
Exactly, and they can't, and so they won't.
Hey, question, Dave just put on YouTube. Watch upcoming earnings from the national home builders. So what I've heard, national home builders right now, the ones I know, people directly involved in, they're taking trips around the country right now, going to vendors, not just lumber vendors, but everybody saying, hey, I need this cut on this cut on this, and I need cost cut. How can you help us, right? Which is what some do, right? But so what are your feelings on home builders sentiment, home builders earnings coming out? I have no idea.
I think their earnings are going to go down a little bit because they're having to give some incentives to sell these homes that they had built on spec. So, I mean, I can speak, when I was down in Texas in late September, that's basically everybody was talking about that, that they were trying to clean up some of this backlog of unsold inventory of new homes that they built on spec before they started building new homes. So that, in order to do that, they've had to give away points. They've had to drop the prices a little bit. They've had to, maybe give them a nice countertop or throw in the dishwasher, just some things to make the transaction go through. And I think you're going to see that'll have an impact on their balance sheets, and then you'll see some lower numbers, right? And I think it'll be worse in the first quarter or at the end of the fourth quarter. I think they have some serious headwinds here for another 6 to 9 months. I don't think this is just going to solve itself on January 1st, right? I mean, we're going to see some long-term, multi-month issues with new home building. Another one is the cost of borrowing money. And then the banks, like how much money do the banks want to put into the housing sector right now? So we'll see. There's going to be a slowdown in housing starts. Greg's right. You'll see permits and starts go to more like 2012 type numbers. If that's where sentiment is, that's what they're telling you. We'll probably go down to 1.2, 1.3.
Greg, what's your thought there? And it also just to seed something here. There's these gurus going around on the internet. I don't know if it's right or not, saying how you should buy at 6.5% to 7% interest rates because next year in the first or second quarter you can refinance back at 3% and 4% again. I'm like, I don't see that.
I mean, home prices increased 20% per year for 2 years, and we're way above long-term trend. So, during that period of time, cost did not go up to build as commensurate. I mean, I guess home builders kind of caught in the worst possible time is, the higher cost to produce product is coming online just as they're having to reduce prices. So it's going to be, I think though, that's going to be a challenge for their earnings. I mean, my bright spot on this is we're going to have a retrenchment in home prices and in home construction over the next 12 to 24 months, but it's going to be more garden variety than nuclear winter a la 2008, 2009. So that's a positive. It's gonna force a lot of more efficiencies through the market. We're gonna weed out we're gonna weed out weaker players. Which is interesting enough. It's like the way capitalism is supposed to work. It's boom bust. So yeah, there you go.
Well, just go around the horn real quick. Specific markets, Matt. What are you seeing out on U.S. species and so forth? I mean, Greg and I were talking about Doug Fir 9 studs before looking at them. How I never thought they'd drop below X number 2 weeks ago, and now we're there, right?
Yeah.
And it's like it always is amazing, and it never is amazing when I see that. And it always happens for different reasons, right? But you were talking last week about the Hem-Fir Doug Fir dynamic. Maybe you could touch on all of that a little bit.
Well, I mean, I'll just make the general observation that Hem-Fir is gone back to a big discount to spruce and Doug Fir. And so Hem-Fir is now the cheapest species in North America, not spruce. For a while there, over the last decade, we've seen spruce running below Hem-Fir. So we're kind of back into more of the range of, like, remember when you and I first started talking to each other in the late 90s? Back then Simpson Timber was still in existence, and they would auction off like 50, 60 cars of hemlock a week, right?
Yeah.
And that stuff always traded anywhere from $40 to $80 below whatever spruce was going for at any given time. And we're kind of there right now. I mean, like, I sold today some 2-4 Hem-Fir 500 Chicago. That's if you take the math out, that's like 400 mil Prince George equivalent. Okay. And futures is at 430, and I don't know what print was overnight, but the print numbers, yeah. So it's higher. It's hemlock is running a discount, and it'll continue to do so because I think that there's going to be some Hem-Fir production here in the Northwest. I don't think mills are going to back away from it. They're going to keep making it. The Hem-Fir logs that cheap lot.
How are the market adjusting to Weyerhaeuser restart after the strike?
Well, the Doug Fir miracle of 2022 was Weyerhaeuser shutting down their logging operations and all their distribution and not their distribution, but all their mill business. And that mill business was heavy. A lot of it's premium. So, Hampton, we benefited, as did every other West Coast mill that produces Doug fir, dry or green. The last 60 days has been a miracle, right? We picked up anywhere $200 to $300 a thousand across the board on every possible thing you can make. And now we're deflating. It's going to take a while, because just because they started the sawmills back up doesn't mean they're running full production right now. And they had to cancel, like, all of the Weyerhaeuser gave back their October contracts. They just said, force majeure, we're not going to ship these. They did honor some of their September business that was affected. They threw away the October business, and now they're just catching up with November and December and what they still owe people from September. So it'll take some time for that to unravel, but the trend is down, right? I mean, if you're green Doug fir, dry Doug fir producer, and you just were selling 2x6 at 700 mil, your next order is not going to be 750. It's probably going to be 650, right? So now that there's new production coming back into the game, and the logs are going to start flowing again too, correct? You guys understand that? Because they shut down their logging.
Okay. Okay, good.
So there will be more Doug fir production in the Northwest here, as opposed to the last 60 days, and so therefore you're going to see lower prices.
What, Matt? I mean, it's just there's only 3 big mills controlling most of it. And Greg, since your poll came out and you talked about it, we probably just guaranteed one of the mills is going to come out with curtailment announcements after today's show. But
curtailment, is it curtailment Wednesday? Okay,
yeah, curtailment Wednesday. Or
one of the things that was interesting is that I talked with a couple of mills down at NOLA, about that. They say, well, there's going to be, we've had curtailments. I'm like, well, every curtailment, other than forget about the Weyerhaeuser strike, but I'm talking about spruce mills, was really an inventory management, right? They had too much inventory, and so they said, in order for us to get our inventory in line, we need to make less, right? There's been no curtailment because of market conditions per se. They've been inventory management curtailments. So
good point. I can talk on OSB. What I've seen around the country is there we got a great little comment up from YouTube in the top there.
Oh yeah, they showed up on the futures chat yesterday also.
Did we are we hacked?
No.
We're not hacked.
All right, you need to put Nick to work. Delete.
Hey,
it's a quick question.
Let's roll.
So OSB,
I gotta go to work.
Hey, just real quick. OSB, what I'm noticing, there's plenty of fluidity. Is that a word? There, 7/16 is pretty much across the country is somewhere 340 to 375, 85 delivered where you're at. 3/4 is 650 to 750 delivered everywhere, wherever you're at. That the thicker panels are getting some play. Greg, what do you see in Western Canada? Matt, I don't know. What's the 2x4 market right now about on random from?
430 to 470, depending on your tally. If you have a lot of 18s and 20s, it helps your value. But if it's just 8 to 16, you're competing with every other sawmill, east and west.
Gotcha. 430. And Greg, Eastern, you kind of went over. Could you just give everybody an update? Because everybody always asks about what's the Euro boats doing. I see they're landing right now, getting drayed and so forth.
Another comment out of NOLA is that there's probably no slowdown in the amount of European lumber that's going to be coming to the U.S. market for the foreseeable future. They there's no other market to go to. The European domestic markets are terrible. Chinese market is paying next to nothing. So it's going to keep flowing the way it is. And then, as we've talked about, it's not like there's a lot more can come. The ports are all maxed out, and that's probably going to stay the same, for the foreseeable future. I think if numbers drop in the first quarter, by the second, third quarter, you may see some adjustments.
Gotcha. Well, listen.
I think Asia might wake up a little bit too, as China's starting to reopen a little bit. They're incrementally taking the restrictions off of their own people, and so right now the bid out of China for low grade lumber is like Greg said, virtually nothing. But historically, when North America stops paying super high prices, the Asian markets have been really good about coming in and buying our low grade lumber, both from Canada and from the West Coast. So I would, if the market does what it sounds like we're talking about here for the next 6 months, because it sounds like we're talking about lower prices, and mills curtailing and us being in a recession. If you watch this show and you don't know anything about lumber for the last half an hour, you would probably come back with, hey, these guys are a little bit negative on lumber right now. Well, in that environment, we saw it all through the early and mid 2000s, all the way up until, I don't know, say 2020, when the pandemic really got going. The Asian markets take a lot of material out of North America historically, and that price range is like, we're down in their range now, right? Like 2x4 number 3 prints what, 250? And I know economy, West Coast economy is like you can buy it for 100. Okay, 100. So we haven't seen those types of numbers for a long time.
One of the things that's interesting is how much the low grade market collapsed so much faster and deeper than the high grade markets. So
a lot of that's because of the absence of the Asian markets, right? Because the Asian markets have been, China specifically, they've had their governments really restricted them. But they're making waves now about that's going to be lifted, and they're going to start. Now, I think their economy's in some bad shape also, and they want to get the money moving around as well. So we'll see how that turns out.
Well, listen.
All right, guys,
Greg,
what are we doing? What's your plan for? Are we on a holiday next week, Ash, for Thanksgiving?
Yeah, holiday for Thanksgiving. Gents, enjoy it with your families. Thank you so much for this year. We'll have our holiday show.
I want
coming
to thank
up in
all of the MX supporters for for their bids and offers. We've been a beneficiary of a lot of trading on the platform lately, Ash, and it's really fun. Really fun.
Greg. I mean, you've been a buyer and a seller of a lot of volume in the last few weeks, and
everybody should give it a try. Get in the water. See what it's like, huh? Take it to the next level. Let's go, baby.
Well, for sure. I put up down there mxlbr.com. Come on, register. It's free to get on. Everybody should be there. All the cool kids are doing it.
You got it.
People are gonna start asking me, like the FTX. How I'm getting compensated for my endorsement.
Yeah.
So we made it. We made a.
All I got was a coffee cup. Okay, that's all I got. No money change hands.
We made a special coin, a digital coin for you, Greg. That'll be launched pretty soon, and it'll be wonderful.
I mean, I can't wait. I can't wait to see the Netflix special on FTX. I mean, this is going to be it's unbelievable.
If you ever get a chance, my friend Dave here showed me. Just Google the CFO of that company and watch it, and you'll probably understand why they were doomed from the beginning.
The CFO, not the CEO.
Oh, you can Google both of them, but this.
That dude was like, and people gave him how much money? Well, you got to be kidding me! Like,
wasn't the CFO his girlfriend, and she didn't know anything about anything?
That's kind of what the observation I had. It's crazy.
I mean, but then again, all I can think of is Fetterman. Enough said.
All right, boys. Well, thank you for showing up. We'll have a good day. We'll talk soon.
Take it easy.
Bye.